Hey there, I'm Brian Fisher here with iZotope, and welcome to part 2 in this series. I've already recorded some guitar and a vocal, and now I'm going to show you how to use RX9 in order to review those files and to solve any problems that you might see or hear in the file. So let's jump in. Okay, so now I have my guitar track and vocal track uploaded to RX9 and we can get started. RX is kind of like a photo editor for your audio. You can see all kinds of information, including noises and stuff you might want to remove just by looking at it. You have two different views of your audio, the kind of standard waveform view and the spectrogram view, which we'll be using today. The spectrogram basically lays out time along the x-axis and frequencies along the y-axis. So you have your lowest frequencies on the bottom and your highest frequencies on the top. And brightness corresponds to loudness. So you can see, for example, a lot of the energy is in the low end of the guitar just by looking at this track. You can use any of the modules I'll be showing you here today in your DAW as plugins, but I like to work in the standalone application where I can see a lot more detail and then make decisions about what I want to tackle. So the first thing I want to do is play back the audio and critically listen for any problems that might jump out at me. So let's start with the guitar, and I'm going to play it back for a minute. So the first thing I want to tackle in the guitar is the string noise, or the string squeak. So I'm zooming in here so we can see the detail a little more clearly. And I'm going to play back an example of what I'm talking about. Right as I transition chords, you can hear my fingers sliding along the fretboard and kind of a loud, harsh noise. So that can become pretty distracting, especially when you add compression and EQ later. It can make those noises even more pronounced and just annoying to listen to. So we want to eliminate those, or at least turn them down quite a bit. So the module for that is Guitar Denoise. There's a module within the module called Squeak, and that's the one that we're going to be working with. So a quick explanation of the different controls. You have sensitivity, which basically controls how much is going to be picked up by this. So all the way at the top is going to be picking up every little noise and squeak, potentially a little bit too much, starting to turn down musical information, and it could sound unnatural. So we don't want to overdo it. We don't want to underdo it, because all the way at 0, it's not going to pick up anything. So we want to be somewhere in the middle there. I think the default is 3. Then we have reduction, which, just like it sounds, is how much you're going to turn down those squeaks by. And then you have two different algorithms that have to do with the duration of the noise. So I think short is up to 200 milliseconds and long is up to 1,000 milliseconds. So long can be really good at picking up longer string squeaks, obviously. Depending on the application, short can also sound better. So we'll play with that, see what sounds best. So let's jump right into it. So the first thing, I like to set the sensitivity. And so to do that, I click the ear icon, which lets you listen to just the noise, just, the squeaks that are being detected. And that way you can make sure it's, picking up exactly what you want it to address and nothing more. I have this selected. I'm going to click preview and adjust the sensitivity if we need to. Here we go. So yeah, I like to play it over a longer section of audio just to make sure, it's dealing with a lot of different types of fretboard noise. It's definitely picking up these larger offenders. You can start to notice the squeaks in the waveform, these kind of long, bright vertical lines, and it lets you easily tackle those problem spots visually. One of the great things about RX. Okay, so I think the sensitivity is in a good place. So I'm going to unclick the ear And now we are going to mess around with the reduction and dial that in. So the way I like to do this is go to a louder squeak and just render that section and listen back. So let's render. All right, I think we can turn that down a little bit more. So I'm going to bring this all the way up to, let's really go far. Let's go to 7.5, see if that is going to be too much. Okay, so I think that went a little too far. You can kind of hear sort of a fuzzy, glitchy sound. And it just doesn't sound natural to me. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to bring this back down to maybe to 6 and see if that sounds more natural. Okay. Awesome. So the string squeak is still there, but I think it would sound a little weird if it was completely missing. So I think we've solved that problem. And here is a before and after. Here's before. And here's after. All right, so I think that sounds good to me. Again, you might want to attenuate that even more. For me, I don't mind if it's there as long as it's much quieter than it was and not going to be something that's too distracting later on. All right, so the next module I want to look at is spectral denoise. So this module will help us remove unwanted background noise. When I was recording the guitar, I had an air purifier running, and so using this module, we can get rid of that. So first off, it has a learn mode, which allows you to choose a section of consistent noise, and it'll create a noise profile, so it can easily detect what's noise and what's the rest of the signal that you want to preserve. For the best results, you want to find a longer section of noise, usually at least a second or two, in order to sample. There's also an adapt mode. It allows it to work in real time, continually adapting the threshold as the noise floor changes. I find this mode can sometimes have unwanted artifacts for things like guitar. So for our purposes, we are going to use learn mode and find a section of noise to sample. So if we go to the beginning of the track and zoom in, I will play back the first couple seconds here of noise you can hear. And then I'm going to click learn, and automatically a noise profile is created. From here, there's a couple other settings that you can tweak. Quality, all the way on the left, this is going to be the lightest on your CPU and the fastest render time. All the way on the right is going to be your best quality algorithm. This is going to take a little bit longer to render, but I think it's worth it, especially if you're using it in standalone mode and not in real time. You also have a threshold and a reduction that controls the amount that you're attenuating that background noise. Typically, I get good results just by leaving these at the default. But if you want to adjust the threshold, higher settings reduce more noise, but also suppress low-level signal components, while lower threshold values preserve low-level signal details, but can often result in being modulated by the signal. All right. So now that we have our settings good to go, I'm going to click render. And here's a before and after of spectral denoise. Here's before. And here's after. Okay, so here's a before and after of all the repairs that we did on the guitar. Here's before. And here's after. All right, let's move on to the vocals. So just like the last one, I'm going to start by playing back the audio and listening for any issues that might jump out at us. I wonder what you're doing now. I wonder if you ever made it work somehow. It's hard to hold on to a dream, and harder to watch it fall apart at the seams again. So right away, you probably noticed the big plosive right here in the word apart. You can even see the plosive down here in the spectrogram. You'll start to recognize these the more that you use RX. So I'm going to pull up the dplosive module. And usually with this module, I just use one of the presets, vocal mic plosives, as a starting point. You can adjust the sensitivity again if you want to control how many plosives are being picked up. Strength is how much those are attenuated, and frequency limit basically controls where RX is actually looking for plosives. And I am going to go ahead and render this section of audio. And here's the result. And harder to watch it fall apart at the seams again. So here's it before. And harder to watch it fall apart at the seams again. And here's after. And harder to watch it fall apart at the seams again. Now that we have the settings dialed in, I'm going to click render to the whole audio file. And automatically you saw all those plosives down here at the bottom vanish. Okay, the next issue I want to tackle is de-essing to get rid of some of the harshness on the S's and other harsh consonants. So I'm going to pull up the DS module. As you can see, there are two different algorithms, classic and spectral. Classic detects sibilance and attenuates with a broadband gain envelope, while spectral offers a more transparent and intelligent and frequency-specific type of de-essing that only affects the high frequencies and leaves the lower frequencies untouched. So I'm going to go with spectral for this one. The next thing I like to do is dial in the threshold. What I want to do is make sure I'm reducing harshness, but not killing the S's so much that it makes the singer, in this case me, sound like I have a lisp. So I'm going to highlight this section of audio where I know there's a few S's. Let's listen back to that before. I wish you could travel in time, see yourself in the larger design. Okay, so what I like to do is click Output S only, which lets me monitor specifically what the DS module is attenuating to make sure that I'm not grabbing too much of the musical information in the signal. So I'm going to click Preview. All right, so it seems to be picking up all the S's. I might even lower that a little bit and listen back. I can already hear it actually, grab a little bit of the word. So I'm going to go back to where it was before and call that good. You also have a frequency cutoff that allows you to kind of set the crossover point where it's going to look for sibilance. And over here you have spectral shaping. So this actually is a way to kind of fine tune the strength of the sibilance processing. All the way on the left is going to be the most natural sounding, whereas all the way to the right is going to flatten the sibilance to a more specific noise profile determined by the spectral tilt. So spectral tilt gives you the flexibility to determine the ideal shape of your high frequency signals. So moving the shape towards brown noise is going to give you a darker sound, and moving it towards white is going to give you a brighter sound. I usually, default to kind of right in the middle at pink noise. I'm going to set this at 50% to start with, and I'm going to unclick Output S only so I can hear how that sounds. I wish you could travel in time, see yourself in the larger design. All right, that sounds good to me, so I'm going to click Render. And now we have all of our sibilants attenuated. This is super helpful to do before processing because EQ and compressors are only going to accentuate the harshness of these consonants and S's. So if we can clean that up front, it's going to save us a headache in mixing. Now here's a before and after of the de-essing that we just did. I wish you could travel in time. I wish you could travel in time. Okay, so the next module is one that I use all the time called mouth declick. This gets rid of all those lip smacks and tongue clicks that a singer makes in between words. These noises can really bug me, so I love this module. It does something really unique, and it's able to very surgically remove those sounds, unlike pretty much anything else. Just like the other modules, we have sensitivity, which controls how many clicks and pops it's going to pick up. Frequency skew, which basically controls where it's looking. So lower frequency is more like lip smacks. Higher frequencies is more, tongue clicks. Click widening extends the repair area around detected clicks to sound more natural on mouth sounds such as lip smacks that have a decay to them. Again, if you want to hear specifically what it's going to be removing, you can click Output Clicks Only and click Preview. I'm going to increase the sensitivity a little bit. So it's a little bit hard to hear, but especially when you have compression going on vocals, a lot of those little clicks and pops will come up in the mix. So removing them just helps clean up the overall signal. Another cool feature is it tells you how many clicks it repaired down here. Okay, so now that we have our settings somewhat dialed in, let's render a small section of audio and make sure that it removed everything we wanted it to remove. Okay, so let's listen back. I wish you could travel in time. Okay, so I heard a little lip smack there. So I'm going to try increasing the sensitivity a little bit. Sometimes it also can be good to do a couple passes if it doesn't catch everything the first round, but let's try increasing sensitivity and see if that helps. Okay, let's listen back. I wish you could travel in time. Okay, so that's still showing up. So I think one of the issues is we need to skew the frequencies a bit lower. And I'm going to hit just that middle section again. And boom, it's gone. So this is an important note. If you are using mouth declick and you want to make sure that it eliminates everything, sometimes you have to do a couple passes with different settings in order to get the exact results you want. All right, now here is a before and after of the processing that we just did. I wish you could travel in time. And here's after. I wish you could travel in time. All right, last but certainly not least is the voice denoise module. This module is super helpful for getting rid of background noise like fans or air conditioners, or again, in my case, I had an air purifier running in the room for demonstration purposes. So I can sample a section of what that noise sounds like right here. And voice denoise works a lot like spectral denoise in that it has a learn function and an adaptive mode, just like I mentioned before. So we can select a large section of the noise and create a noise profile. The next feature to pay attention to is Optimize For. So you have a choice of dialogue or music. In this case, we're obviously doing music since it's singing. This caters more to sustained notes and works better in that application. You also have filter type. surgical, or gentle. I usually leave it on gentle because it gives you a more transparent sound with less artifacts. And then you have your reduction and your threshold. So usually for reduction, if I'm doing something where I really need to get rid of a lot of noise and it's going to be heavily compressed, I might even go up to, 14, 15 dB here. But for the purposes of this, I'm going to stay at about 12, and it should be more than enough attenuation to get rid of that fan noise. I'm going to render a small section of audio so that you can hear the difference of before and after. So if you listen here, this section of audio, you'll hear the background noise just drop out. It's hard to hold on to a dream, and harder to watch it fall apart at the seams again. So I'm going to apply this to the whole audio waveform now. Okay, so here's a before and after of all the repairs that we did on the vocals. Here's before. I wonder what you're doing now. I wonder if you ever made it work somehow. It's hard to hold on to a dream, and harder to watch it fall apart at the seams again. And here's after. I wonder what you're doing now. I wonder if you ever made it work somehow. It's hard to hold on to a dream, and harder to watch it fall apart at the seams again. Okay, so there you go. There is our cleaned up audio. One word of caution: just because you can doesn't mean you should. So don't go into autopilot on any of these modules. Not every audio recording is going to need, voice denoising or mouth declicking or even de-essing. It really depends on kind of the audio you're starting with. So don't try to fix problems that aren't there. All right, now that we're done, we can export these files. I'm just going to go up to File, Export, and you can choose your file type and your bit depth. I usually leave these all the same as they came in with. I'm going to click OK. File destination. I usually add a suffix like RX so I can tell the difference between that and the original. And then you just click Save. And I'll do the same for the acoustic guitar. And there you go. So now our files are cleaned up and ready for the mixing stage. All right, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you feel empowered to be able to get professional sounding audio, whether you're recording in a home or bedroom studio. As always, feel free to head over to iZotope.com if you want to try out a free trial of RX9 or any of their other tools.